All right, Shalom. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High and His only begotten Son. Call Halayim La, Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. All right, double honors unto the apostles and elders, a great millstone, root and teach well, Wabarakathum to the hopeful elect. All right, now today through the Spirit, I'm going to go into a video, entitled The Role of a Concubine, right? Because you have a lot of camps that are still pushing out the doctrine that a man can't lay with a heathen woman that's of the other nations and things of that sort, so on and so forth, right? But ultimately, the scriptures have it in our law that they have a purpose. A heathen or concubine woman, their purpose is as being likened into a secondary wife of a lower status, or they're going to be like our midwives, okay? Which that's where ancient nurses were, midwives, where they take care of nurse the children and they servants in the house, okay? Because when you're in slavery, when you take over a nation, you're gonna possess, like, a woman is likened to a spoil, and what they will be is they'll be either a concubine, or they'll become a servant, like a midwife, where they take care of the children, they nurse the babies, clean up stuff in the house, and do things of that sort. Okay, so that's what the heathen women are gonna be in the kingdom. That's their role. Okay, because our women are gonna be royalty. Their job is gonna be basically to just stay, looking good for us, to make us look well, represent us well, and then just take care of the house while we go do our king shit. That's what our women are gonna be doing, but they're gonna have servants and handmaids. So our women are just gonna be helping for what we got going on. They ain't gonna be having to do all that servant shit. That's what the heathen women are gonna be doing, cleaning up and like what I'm saying, doing all that extra stuff. That's gonna be for these midwives, these concubines, right? So that's the role that they had. When you look oftentimes through the scriptures, they were servants, right? One of the one of the forms of servitude is what? Popping them, bed wench. All right, but this is the word concubine etymology. It says the word concubine originates from Latin concubina, a woman who cohabits with a man without being married to him. Now, when you go into that biblical marriage, it came basically with tying the families together. Okay, that's why the Lord said not to marry heathen women, because we can't be married to somebody that's that worships false idols. You see, that are not forwarding Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai, because then you're gonna bring in all types of false idols, different way of being, that the way the culture or the standard is set for us to be as an Israelite, to be above these nations. You'll be going down to what those other nations are doing. You ain't gonna be above them. You're gonna be equal to them by a covenant. You see, and that's what was the main thing that the Lord had an issue with. When we went to the land, we learned the ways of the Canaanites. You see, we worshiped their gods. We started doing a lot of their customs, which the Lord was against. That's why He wrote it. He had it written on the stones, on the tablets in the law, not to do these things, because that's what the Canaanites were doing, right? Acting lawless, without governance. You see, it says which is derived from con, together, and it says cuber, to lie, concuber. So it means to lie together or cohabit, right? And it says appearing in English around the 13th, 14th century to describe a secondary lower status wife or mistress, right? So it's a mistress or a secondary wife. You see, and that's not a foreign concept. In the past, we had concubines, right? And we had midwives. All right, let's start here. This is Genesis 24:59. It says, and they sent away Rebekah, his sister, and her nurse. Okay, let's go into what a nurse is. Yanak, it says a suckle nurse, suckling baby, to give suck, a nursing woman. You see, to give milk, to make suckling, right? So a nurse is somebody that takes care of the baby. You see? NLT, it says, so they said goodbye to Rebekah and sent her away with Abraham's servant and his men. The woman who had been Rebecca's childhood nurse went along with her. Okay? So he had women to take care of the children, help raise the children and the kids. All right? Let's go into the next precept. This is just showing you that a concubine's role. Okay, this Genesis 35:17. It says, "And it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said unto her, Fear not, thou shalt have a son also." This is Rachel. All right, Jacob's wife. Okay, now let's go right here. It said midwife. It's the same thing. All right, you lied. Okay, it says, now this is help delivering the baby, but it's still ultimately a servant. Okay, it says, you lied, right? It says, to bear, bring forth, begot, to help. You go down, it says, assist or tend is a midwife. Midwife, it says, to begat a child. Okay, day of birth, right? It says to bring forth, to deliver, labor. Okay, medically to act as a midwife. All right, to bear birth, to bring forth, bring up. Okay, so it says declare the pedigree of. Okay, you see. So that's something that that's something that Israelite women were doing, and that's something that the heathen women are going to do in the kingdom, right? And a lot of these midwives and servants, they were concubines. This is Genesis 35:22. It says, yep, and you see that a lot of those women, they became concubines or became female secondary wives to various men in the scriptures. This is Genesis 35:22. It says, "And it came to pass when Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went in and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine." Right? So men had concubines. You see? That was one of Jacob's concubines, Bilhah. Okay? Because Leah and Rachel had servants. See? And it says, and Israel heard it, and now the sons of Jacob were 12. He says, now the sons of Jacob were 12, yeah. But it said Bilhah, his father's concubine. You go into that word concubine right here. Okay? It says Lagash. All right. Concubine, paramour. Okay? You come down, concubine, paramour. Okay, let's see here. We just went into what that word concubine means. You see, it's like a secondary wife, lesser wife, and that's what the role of a lot of heathen women will be in the kingdom, the beautiful ones. This is Deuteronomy 21:10. It says, "When thou goest to war against thine enemies, and Yahweh Bashem Rashad thy power have delivered them into thy hands, and thou hast taken them captive, and thou seest among the captives a beautiful woman." This is when you're going to war against heathens in our law. And it says, "Now seest among the captives," because we said we're gonna possess those whose captives we were, right? It says, "And thou seest among the captives a beautiful woman, and thou hast a desire unto her, that thou wouldest have her to be thy wife," secondary wife. "Then thou shalt bring her home to thine house, and she shall shave her head and pare her nails," right? "And she shall put the raiment of her captivity from off of her," right? "And she shall remain in thine house and bewail her father and mother a full month. And after that thou shalt go in unto her and be her husband, and she shall be thy wife." You see? So that's the law that goes into it. You allow her to mourn for her family. Those are order to her, but at the end of the day, you have to forward your law into her. She got to get with the program, right? So you give her time to mourn for her family and do all that, but she got to put off that old way that she used to be into, right? But we had concubines, and that's the law in it, okay? Okay, let's go here. This is another one that proves that we were able to have concubines. This is 2 Samuel 5:13, right? It says, and David took him more concubines and wives out of Jerusalem after he was come home from Hebron, and there were yet sons and daughters born to David. Right? So that's not David was a man of the Most High's understanding. I mean, a man's heart, man after the Most High's heart. So he had concubines, and the Lord was okay with it. So it's not a sin or evil to do it. It's just that we can't make marriages with them. That's why you have precepts like this one right here, which I'm gonna get straight to the point because I'm kind of on a time crunch. This is Deuteronomy 7 and verse 1. It says, "When Yahweh Shah thy power shall bring thee into a land whither thou go to possess it, and have cast out many nations before thee, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites, the 7 nations greater and mightier than thou. And when the Lord thy power shall deliver them from before thee, thou shalt smite them, utterly destroy them. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor show mercy unto them. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter thou shalt not give unto his son, nor his daughter to thy son." Right? "For they will turn away thy son from following me, that he may serve other gods. So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy you suddenly." Right? So, you're not supposed to make marriages with them, covenants with them. You see? And that's where the transgression was. The transgression wasn't having a heathen woman, right? It's when you made marriages with them, trying to join the families together. Because what came with joining those families together was you worshiping their idols, their different rituals they had to do for the idols, and so on and so forth, right? Which is transgression. You see? That's the point of the lesson, man. Lord willing, this quick lesson edified. I like to end it off by saying, "Call Allah Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai Bahashim Rakakadash, Debar and City Apostles Elders, Great Millstone Root Teacher."